links to any question, an answer to any question you might have. For instance, there are now 20 conditions that are called khaki conditions, conditions for which the AME can issue if the airman woman comes to the aviation medical examiner with the medical information from their treating physician. And they fulfill a checklist called the khaki worksheet that's also within the guide for aviation medical examiners. So that's just a tip. That website, guide for aviation medical examiners, can be Googled. Oh, here's a tip. You should search that guide with a Chrome browser, not Safari, because it doesn't link up with Safari very well. You know, at your leisure, you can look at that. It's filled with information. In fact, the FAA.gov website is filled with educational information for pilots generally. But what, if any, questions do you have? So now, Dr. Lester, Harriet Lester, the ophthalmologist, and Dr. Dominic Zito, I've seen over the years. I've gone to my aviation medical meetings every 3 to 6 years over many, many years. And they, if they were to participate, they have some slides that they could have presented, but I'm not sure how you present those slides. They sent them to me in an email, but I don't know how to put them on this format.
You can share your screen.
Oh.
So pull them up on your screen, and then on the lower central portion of the screen will be a toolbar, and share screen should be active.
Let me pull up what Dr. Lester sent me. Now, the problem is I pulled it up and it occupies the entire screen.
When you share screen, it should give you a selection of which it's aware of the different panels that you have on your desktop, on your monitor. So when you share screen, it should allow you to select the one you're looking for.
So for tonight, we will bypass it. I did have a question from 2 different prospective pilots. This is CJ.
Doctor, can you email me those?
So my 2 questions are this. I'm passing these along from other people. This is a relatively new pilot who had amblyopia as a child, able to get that corrected and get a CDL. What would the recommended disclosure be? Because the forms, when I look at the forms, they're really, really broad.
Okay, there's an ophthalmology report form that I'm sure you can find within the Guide for Aviation Medical Examiners.
Yep.
That his ophthalmologist would fill out. As you know, amblyopia, cross eyes, whatever, is a situation where depending on how long they've had it, the brain may accommodate that amblyopia. So it depends on how early it was treated as to what the fix is, as far as what I know. Now, Dr. Lester, an ophthalmologist, would have been great to explain this. So yeah. I think that it relates to simply the vision testing results, but an ophthalmology report would be helpful to take to the aviation medical examiner.
Gotcha. So the key thing there would be preparation.
Well, the key thing is preparation, a note from the treating ophthalmologist physician, and the vision testing results, both visual fields and visual acuity for 3rd class.
Cool,
now, for second and first class, there are further vision requirements that relate to fusion of an object in the distance, both horizontally and vertically. So possibly amblyopia, depending on how severe it was, could interfere with that. So it might affect the second and first class vision testing results.
The second one is one that you and I had discussed briefly. This was somebody who lost vision in one eye and was interested in learning to fly. What's the procedure for them?
Okay, that's monovision, and people with monovision use other accommodation techniques to determine how large an object is in the distance and how close it is from where they are. So there is a tremendous accommodation that occurs compared to people with two eyes, such that there's really very little difference. So a person with one eye can fly a plane, be certificated, but they will have to undergo a flight test by a FSDO, get a waiver for a static physical defect, in this case, one eye. So there's really no disease process. It's just a paired organ is limited to one of those organs.
That's so cool. Here we always thought it was depth perception required too, and it doesn't.
The other one was over-the-counter medication.
Yeah, okay, what those are, and by the way, those are very, very helpful links that are not easily found, but are all within the guide for aviation medical examiners. So if you want to share those links with the participants, that's really public information and very helpful information.
Well, maybe what I could do is give it to Malcolm and he could put it in the Dropbox, which is.
Yeah, I mean, that information you can share publicly. Now, the slideshow is a kind of proprietary property of Dr. Lester and Dr. Zito, but no one's particularly interested in the slideshow. And that's just basic information.
You want me to bring that up right now?
That's out there publicly. I would say the slideshow is for a presentation, but it's not to be disseminated widely. So I'll just say Dr. Lester is the regional flight surgeon, Eastern region. That's New York City, and it's down, it's not Connecticut. Connecticut goes towards Boston. But anything a little bit west and south of that is the Eastern region, New York State.
Okay.
And Dr. Zito is referred to as a deputy regional flight surgeon. Yep. Oh, they always like statistics, like the coronavirus. So this is accidents, fatal accidents, major categories, couple of gyroplanes. I don't like gyroplanes. Dirigibles. Well,
Since you have this on your computer, if you would just like me to go to slide 12, you could just give me the number of the slide and I could go directly, or we could see.
Yeah.
It's your option.
Well, I see the snapshots. Why don't you go chronologically? And if I see anything that pops out, some of this is good information, and we know this, BART 6153, prohibition on operations during a medical deficiency. So you're not supposed to act as a pilot in command if you have anything that results in unsafe operation of the airplane. And this says, well, that is taking medication, receiving treatment for a medical condition that results in a person or unable to meet the requirements necessary for the pilot operation, or an unsafe operation of an airplane, is often said. Okay, no medication that makes a person unable to safely perform the duties or exercise the privileges of airman certificate. Well, we know that. Now, I'll expand on that. Generally, when you take any medication, if it's the first time you've got to not fly for a period of time, what is that period of time? Well, if you never took penicillin before, you don't know if you're going to have a reaction to penicillin or not. So you should wait a reasonable period of time. In that case, it's often said a day to know if you're going to have an allergic reaction or a rash or something that would impair your safe flying of an airplane. Other medications that might have any side effects that would change your ability to safely operate an airplane is, as a general rule, 3 half-lives. Now, what does that mean? Every medication is metabolized to a certain degree so that half of it is eliminated from your body over a period of time. Some medications have a very short half-life, a couple hours. So 3 half-lives would be 6 hours. Other medications have long half-lives. There's one I'm thinking of that has a half-life of 17 hours. The pilot didn't know that. So I pointed out that if the pilot took that particular medication for the first time, they've got to wait 3 times 17 hours before they safely fly an airplane. Now, would it ever be a factor? Well, probably never. But if there was an incident or accident, it might be a factor. So you got to pay attention to those things. And I'll expand on that. The difference was, and this is medical information. The difference was the difference between Viagra and Cialis. Viagra has a half-life of, I think, 2 hours. So that's 6 hours. Cialis has a half-life of 17 hours. So this pilot went to his family doc, the good old guy that wants to help out the pilot, the patient of his, and gives him a medication that impairs him for 3 times 17 hours.
Yeah, doctor, I have a question.
Yes.
Where would that half-life information be? Is there some registry where all medications can be?
You know, there are thousands of medications. Just Google it. What is the half-life of Viagra? What is the half-life of, Benadryl? The FAA would like you not to fly for 3 times the half-life.
Thank you.
What I was told was refer to the bottle, and when it gives you directions, like ibuprofen, I think it says take 1 every 6 hours, but no more than so many per 24 hours, that the 6 hours that's listed on the bottle under directions, that's considered the half-life.
Yeah, that's not true. That might be a rule of thumb, and a physician may throw that out there, but that's not the pharmacologic metabolic pathway that is the half-life. And this is common sense, but obviously there's any mental changes, dizziness, drowsiness, vision disturbance, never fly after the first dose of a medication you have taken. And a lot of these slides just are out there to show there's ingredients that can fool you if you don't read the package. A lot of these things are are medications that can impair you. Go ahead and go through these pretty quickly. Oh yeah, this is junk. But it makes sense if you're going to take a medication to read the package and know what the ingredients of that medication are. Go ahead. Keep going. Aviation accident rates. Well, it shows aviation rates are decreasing. That's good. Accidents per 100,000. And in 2011, 7 accidents, general aviation, per 100,000. It sort of looks like the curve for coronavirus. It's improving. Go ahead. This is wait times. So someone's calculated half-life times 3, and there's Benadryl. And I've known this forever. 50 milligrams of Benadryl is like drinking a couple beers or more. So Benadryl, 50 milligrams, 60 hours, some effect of Benadryl will be in your system. Chlorpheniramine, which is just another antihistamine. Valium, long-acting benzodiazepine, 20 days. Zoloft, wow, 60 days, an antidepressant. Flexeril, a common muscle relaxant. I think it's in an antihistamine category, 8 days. Xanax, another benzo, 6 days. Percocet, which is, I don't know, a narcotic, 72 hours. Zyrtec, an antihistamine, readily available, 48 hours. So dextromethorphan, which is DM, dextromethorphan. Dextromethorphan is in Robitussin. which I think they may have taken that out of Robitussin because it was abused so much. But that's a mild narcotic. And if you take that as a cough suppressant, 48 hours. So a lot of these things can screw you up.
Some
Mental,
of these pills are big enough that you can cut them in half. Let's just say Zyrtec.
right.
And cut that in half. Does that change the numbers?
Not really, because even though it's less milligrams, the half-life hasn't changed. So some of that medication is going to be in you for that period of time.
But will
So,
the reduced volume be below some sort of threshold?
yeah, you know, that's pharmacology, and I think some of that's true. If you gave if you gave a Benadryl to an elephant, it might be a different effect than if you or I took a Benadryl. So that's probably true. But for flying an airplane, it just potentially you can be impaired.
I have a question. I take Flexeril every now and then.
Yeah.
These days, like it says 8 days for Flexeril, is
Right.
that if you're on it chronically, or
No,
if you
no,
just take it one time?
That's it. If you take it the first time, that's when this applies, with the caveat, in any individual, there may be various different side effects.
Okay,
So only you know yourself. And if you know of any reason that the verbiage is unsafe operation of an aircraft, then you got to ground yourself.
gotcha. I didn't know if it made a difference if you
Yeah.
if you took it on a chronic basis. I have some shoulder issues sometimes, and I take one, I don't know, maybe once every 3 weeks or something, and I never really thought about it, but this is interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you went to your aviation medical examiner, they would discuss that with you to make sure that you didn't have any ongoing impairment related to flying an airplane. And if you
Right.
didn't, then I would make a notation on the form to keep the FAA happy, and you'd be okay.
I see.
But
That
some
was a
of
good
these,
question.
but some of these that are chronic and have any addicting potential is what's going to get you in trouble, like dextromethorphan at the bottom that was in Robitussin. I think they've taken it out of Robitussin because kids, but people generally were abusing Robitussin DM because it was a mild narcotic. Dextromethorphan, well, there it is. They were abusing dextromethorphan. So I think they had to either restrict it or delete it from the pharmacy. Next. Oh, Clayton Marcus, my hero, Lone Ranger. Hey, Bertie remembers that. Next. Okay, this is the eastern region that extends from New York to Virginia, different from New England, Boston area. But those two docs have responsibility for this entire region. Oh, this is very interesting. It has affected aviation medical examiners because the FAA essentially has offloaded medical evaluation and determination and defaulted to the local aviation medical examiner for now a growing list, including 20 different diagnoses. And they're in the Guide for Aviation Medical Examination, medical examiners. These are some of those, some rather significant medical problems. If you go to your aviation medical examiner with a complete report from your treating physician, and there's a worksheet associated with each of these conditions, and the worksheet algorithm items are complied with, then the aviation medical examiner can issue the medical certificate. Go ahead. 20 conditions, can issue a regular certificate. It's significant things like prostate cancer. And you can find these things in the guide. And I think a lot of that is able to be found FAA.gov website. Next. Mass team shares. So that was, Mendy, the secretary of Dr. Zito, said the slides were kind of old and they needed to be revamped. And they have not really put together a very complete program. But this coronavirus has stimulated them to begin to delve into further education with programs like this. That's why those two doctors wanted to participate tonight. They would have a great deal to offer. So in the future, if we could do this again and invite those two doctors in, Dr. Lester emphasized trying to set up a password because they're concerned about, I don't understand it, but security.
And the lack of a password, this is CJ, was at my request. And so we absolutely can and will set up a password in future.
Yeah, I'm not concerned. This is an Apple computer, but that Dr. Lester and Zito were concerned.
If there are,
the one pilot can share those quick links that were in that email with the participants tonight, because that's free information. That's good information.
and if it's all right with you, we'll put those documents on northeastcomanche.org in our documents section section.
That's fine.
Question? Yeah, Doctor, what was the name of that manual that listed the conditions, the 20 conditions? I didn't
Okay.
get it before it got off the screen.
That's actually one of the links. As I recall, it was www.faa.gov/CACI, CACI conditions. But that's one of the links. So if the gentleman sends you the links, then you'll have that.
Thank you very much.
All right, doctor, if I can ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
All right, so we saw all those medications and the conditions. If you can just do it briefly, because I think when I used to deal with this with airmen myself, how easy or difficult is it for an airman to maintain his medical with diabetes or heart condition?
Okay, that's undergone changes over the years. And in my estimation, it's become more liberal. The FAA is now certifying many diabetics, particularly for third class, even some that are taking insulin with a special issuance. So it has to be completely evaluated and approved by the FAA. But many of those conditions are acceptable through the special issuance program by the FAA. And again, a lot of that information is in the guide. And because it changes over a period of time, it's the old story that the information you learned 20 years ago may be a tenth of it's germane now. The guide is what you need to access frequently. It will.
Hang on a second. I'm on a conference.
Go ahead.
Just give me 10 seconds.
And I understand also with heart disease, you can also, it's not as difficult as it used to be. Is that correct?
That's correct. And don't forget, a plug for Basic Med. I just reviewed that. If you have had a valid medical certificate, even a medical certificate with a special issuance for a specific problem since July 2006 forward, then you can go to a licensed physician in your state and go through Basic Med with the other limitations. You know, the plane has to be less than, I think, 6,000 pounds or less, and 6 sold on board or less. How many Comanches? 6 passenger.
I have a request I'm relaying. This is CJ again. Our Australian friends had mentioned that they have trouble getting their medicals back after certain types of coronary events. And they said that the Australians tend to take their lead from America's AMEs. is there, and they said, if you ever have anything you can do to plea our case, please do so. So this is a question about the influence the U.S. can have on making the skies more available to people in other countries. Do you happen to know anything about that, Tom? And if so,
Yeah,
do you have any
I
suggestions?
really don't know anything, except there are, regional specific rules and regulations, country by country. For instance, I had one pilot that called me from Germany because his medical certificate that ordinarily would expire at the end of the month, 6 months from whatever day he had his medical, expired exactly on the day, 6 months from the day he had his medical, rather than the last day of the month in some foreign country. So the rules and regulations vary country by country. I know that, but I don't know about Australia. It sounds like they're a little more rigid than the United States.
In the coronary area, the people talking to me said that they were, but they also said that they actually, I think, wanted to see if we could get, the divisions in the U.S. to somehow take a position on this that the Australian system would then copy. So maybe it's already happened, because Eric Sachs was just asking you some of the questions. And just so you know, Eric Sachs was an AOPA legal advocate for many years. And so he's got some experience with this area.
And a plug with the AOPA, it's a great source for answering medical questions. And they have a very capable medical department. And in fact, a former flight surgeon from Oklahoma City that headed the entire aeromedical group was one of their medical advisors for a while. So he helped them get that program going. So if you have a significant medical problem, or even more than one significant medical problems, the AOPA is a great source that will review your medical information and kind of tell you before you go to the AME, yep, you've got everything you need.
When we were working on the Comanche Safety Study update with Air Safety Institute, AOPA's Air Safety Institute, David Kenny, in order to help support basic med getting passed, said he did a survey of older pilots to determine whether older pilots were having medical incidents in the air that were causing things that showed up in the NTSB database, or the AS, or the whatever the other one is. And he said they were remarkably rare. And the thing that nobody knew is, why are our older pilots not having accidents or incidents in the air? And the reason I kind of wanted to try to quantify it is that maybe us younger pilots should be learning something. So do you have any thoughts on that, Tom, from your 50 years as an AME?
A couple. I think older pilots are more cautious and careful, and maybe duplicate things more than younger pilots that are bolder and maybe not as cautious. That's just my thought. And also remember, I think older pilots don't fly as many hours as other age pilots.
I would think older pilots have better equipment in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's true. Better equipment.
That they're older people flying may be more elective. It's not like an urgent thing. You have to be there or something. It just maybe have a different reason for flying. Maybe.
No, good point. It happened to me yesterday. I taxied over to gas pumps, gassed up, had a full boat tanks of gas in my Mooney. I went out and I had a flat front tire. So I said, oh shit, I'll drive instead of fly. Yeah. Now I have a great mechanic. So in less than an hour, he replaced the front tire with a new tire and tube. And an hour and a half later, I flew out. But I was prepared to drive. I didn't have to fly.
The other tongue-in-cheek comment from some of the guys that do aviation insurance, who commented that in their 25 years as being aviation insurance agents. They said we very rarely get claims from our older pilots, but they said we think it's because they're afraid to make a claim or we'll yank their coverage. So maybe that's an extra reason for caution.
CJ, could you define older pilots? My question was, define older pilots.
That's a good question. Because
Sorry.
that's kind of a relative term these days, right?
I think you're looking at them.
Yeah, to me it is.
Yep. I happen to know the age range of the people on this call is 20s to 80s. No, 20s to 90s. And as far as I know, everybody's in medical.
CJ, I think you should count yourself as an older pilot.
I'm in my second half century, so you're right, I am.
For what it's worth, people aren't used to Zoom. If you leave yourself muted and then just push on the space bar if you're on a computer, that'll temporarily unmute you. Use like a push-to-talk switch.
One of the things that we will do is we'll put together a little user guide when we send out the next invite so that the connection process and the navigation process is smoother. We appreciate everybody bearing with us as we work through how to make these work.
Okay, we've been going on for about an hour and 7 minutes so far, and I think we've got some of the bugs worked out. Anybody wants to stay on at the very end? I've got one thing to talk about with Pete, but so far I think the maximum we had was 21 participants with a total of 23 different people coming in tonight.
Yep, I agree.
Good to know
So
about it.
just one last thing. If you'd like to repeat this with the other two docs, which would be a great source of information, you can let your leaders know, and that would be a fun activity.
We would definitely like to do
Time
that.
stamp about 7:30. Is that reasonably convenient?
Yeah.
Tom, one of the people I talked to today was the moderator of the Piper Comanche Facebook group, which has about almost 2,300 pilots on it right now, mostly Comanche owners and drivers, and then some people who just found out it's a great place to go for information and support. So this could be a large meeting. I have one guy from Alaska that wants to join us when we do it again. And do you have any suggestions on, or any concerns with a very, very large audience?
Not at all, unless the microphones and the background noise wasn't handled right. But if people were mute and you could hear them when they talked, I think it'd be okay.
Cool. And I think what we'll do is ask people to either email questions ahead of time or put them in the chat window. And that way we can, if there's a ton of, I love the fact that people could just ask questions, but if there's a ton of stuff coming in, then we can just use the stuff in the chat window as our source of questions. Anybody else have any suggestions on how to manage this?
I think we should go to Zulu time on the meeting announcement in case this gets distributed beyond where we are, so that people that want to come in can figure it out.
Cool.
Probably just Eastern time, and then if you get any Central or Pacific people, they'll know how to just subtract.
Yep, we'll definitely be having a lot more of those.
I have one.
Go for it, Bill.
One of the things that I'm running into now is that there's a lot of people, pilots out there that have experience with dealing with insurance companies. And I think it would be a very good idea to kind of get a feeling. They were telling me today is, you older pilots, we're going to raise the premium on you.
Mm-hmm.
CJ, can I comment on that? Because they were going to do that. It was going from $1,100 to almost $1,800. And I said, no, I'll just self-insure or just pick liability. I waited until almost a day or two before the expiration of my insurance, and they sent me an email, and they said they were going to charge me the same or similar to last year. They said that was because New York State suggested, didn't demand it, but suggested that their people not have the premiums raised for different insurance products.
So perhaps we can lean on our governors and Congress critters for a little support officially.
Yeah, this was specifically related to this pause and the problems in our economy. But that's a good point. Insurance rates have just gone up, I think, inappropriately.
Bill, does that help at all, or?
Well, what I was thinking is that I would like to have had some place where I could say, hey, what experience have you had with this kind of a situation? What Because I have been totally misled. My plane was exposed in the Florence, okay? And I won't go into the details, but the moment that they said, oh, corrosion, oh, everything. And the fact of the matter is, there's little, if any, corrosion on the plane. When you talk to the people, everybody seems to have a different viewpoint. And then when you talk to the insurance companies, they have a very different viewpoint. And I was talking to a Venco today, and I was quite pleased with how straightforward they were. But you really got to take a look at your policy, and you got to find out what does the policy cover, and how do you define the situation you're talking about in terms of their their terms.
I think Avemco is hungry for business because AOPA dropped them as their partner insurance company and partnered with another insurance company.
Global. They went with Global. That's interesting, Tom. So part of the reason that's helpful information is Comanche twin drivers have been getting hammered, especially older Comanche twin drivers, and Avemco has turned out to be the refuge. They have been picking up a lot of twins, and particularly older twins. So that may be part of why. Is Eric Sachs still on?
Yes, his microphone is muted at the moment.
The reason that I bring up Eric Sachs is I started to look into insurance in part at the request of Eric and two other Comanche drivers. A couple of things have come up. I spoke with an agent today who said he said the number of claims have not necessarily increased, but the dollar figures have increased. And although GA is not necessarily the problem area, the Kobe Bryant crash, the B-17 crash, and the third one that he cited was turbine drivers were creating very, very large losses for the insurance companies. And that was, he felt, driving this increase in premiums. And then they were being somewhat judicious about it. Like if you drive something with a rotor, like a helicopter, your premiums probably doubled this year. For many of us driving singles, our premiums have gone up perhaps 10 to 15%. Is that reflect, by the way, just a quick survey. If you're driving a single Comanche, let me start with that. Have your premiums increased this year, and by how much?
Mine have more than doubled.
I think ours only went up marginally, maybe 10%.
Went up a little bit.
We know Tom was able to keep his pretty flat.
Well,
Robert?
no change from Murray and Nancy, but we're due for a renewal in a couple weeks.
So a couple of things. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Hans. And I'm glad that this was brought up because mine is also coming due here in a few weeks. So I'm going to start shopping. And thank you. I'll research that.
Yep. So I was encouraged to call AirPros and Falcon and AOPA and Avemco in the Comanche area, in that they are known as handling underwriting policies for all of them. By the way, Bill Caniff is one of our secret weapons because he's a former insurance underwriter. So he's been able to help provide some insight into the calculus used from the underwriter side. And the reason that we're so interested in this is we can see that RV drivers, lake amphibian drivers, because Malcolm's a lake amphibian instructor, CFII, as well as a Comanche and other CFII. We see RVs, we see lakes and other groups that have gotten noticeably improved accident rates when they participate in recurrent type training and a little bit of aircraft specific technical maintenance. So in the Comanche area, that would be particularly our landing gear adjustments. So that can help with the moving accident statistics, but almost as large, or in some cases larger, are the active God statistics, where we see massive destruction of aircraft from, massive destruction from tornadoes, floods, named storms, hail are some of the big ones. And I propose to some of these insurers that we do two things. One is we engage in recurrent type training with an authorized program. And the second is that we organize Comanche pilots to help each other if a named storm or a known event is coming, where we can move our aircraft out of harm's way quickly if we have the support of another pilot. So let's say I'm on the coast, I've got a hurricane coming in, I have somebody 200 miles inland that I connected with, and I call my 200-mile inland guy and I'm like, I got to get off the coast. My insurance company, most policies have an endorsement that will cover $500 to $1,000 worth of expenses for you to move your airplane out of harm's way. And again, 50% of losses are related to not anything we did. It's just somebody came along and dropped a hurricane on your airplane. If we are able to self-organize so that we can quickly and easily arrange to fly our airplane someplace where a buddy will fly us back and then watch our bird while we're dealing with moving our family out of harm's way, that appears to be able to have a noticeable impact on predictable losses from named storms and floods. Those are the things where we can kind of see them coming and move aircraft. That's the thing that we've been starting to shop around to insurance brokers, is if we participate in a program where we engage in recurrent type training and we actively support each other in acts of God damage, our hope is that they will get interested in improving their margins and lowering their risk and support the program with reduced rates. Kudos, this is thanks to Eric Sachs. We've been working on this now for about 15, 16 months, and we'll see, but it may have an impact on our insurance rates. Any comments or guidance or thoughts or questions?
The insurance broker did say one of the causes of the increased costs were all the fires in the West in California.
I started interviewing pilots to find out how many were aware that their policies almost all carry an endorsement that will cover your costs if you move your aircraft out of harm's way. I would say more than half were unaware that they had that benefit in their policy. Did you all know about yours?
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
So part of this would just be education. Hey, did you know that they'll actually put gas in your tank to move your airplane? How often do you get your expenses covered when you fly by your insurance company? So it might even be kind of nice. The other thing is the technical powerhouse that the Northeast tribe has started to accumulate, including like Robert Klein and Les Thomas and Bill Caniff. This was when the election committee formed and started to try to have to figure out how to do really legal auditable elections. One of the good side effects is we now have the ability to find all of the pilots that are close to you and help you connect with them. So it was hard to do that search until recently. So that benefit will also help us organizing groups to support movement of aircraft out of harm's way. And it's part of the reason why when you've been getting your ballots, we've been saying if you can possibly find your way to keeping your information updated. One of the reasons is if we know your home airport and we know how to reach you, we can ask you if you'd be able to help your neighbors and also just help introduce you, help you find your neighbors. Tom, thank you ever so much for making your expertise and all of your goodwill available to us, and for bearing with our training wheel problems.
Okay, let's try it again sometime.
We will be doing that sooner rather than later. We're going to put out a survey to find out the best times for people, and but we'll likely stick to the 7:30 time.
If people will go to the participants window at the bottom of your screen and see the participants, at the right side, there is a check or an X for under reaction, or you'll see reaction. So you can either give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's your choice.
DJ, will you be, I tuned in really late. Will you be sending out a link? I see it's being recorded, so I apologize for being late.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Pete, would you be able to, one of us will send out a link and probably post it 2 places. Russ Wright suggested that we post it on the Piper Comanche Facebook group. And then I think we'll post a link to it if we can find a space on the Northeast Tribe website. Was that Steve or was that Alan?
It was Steve. Yeah, I
Okay.
just saw it when I got on the Comanche forum. On
Yeah, we apologize for this going out so late. We were struggling with the fact that there's been minor outages and slowdowns all over the US. And so we were actually having we had tested this out last week and then we had crazy technical difficulties today trying to do our test run. So again, we'll make sure that we do an earlier test run and get the link and everything out ahead of time.
And because of your technology problems early on, I tried to buy you lunch March in Lebanon, and you weren't answering your phone.
Oh, man. You were there?
Oh. I was visiting Dartmouth against UNH lacrosse.
Dang, cool.
Mark Sullivan just checked in.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, how's it going? I just
good. Mark's going to be one of our
another
participants.
conference, so I just got off that.
Ah, good deals. Yep. So Mark is going to be one of our participants when we talk autopilots, because Mark is now the leader of the group getting the Trio autopilot STC'd for a number of certificated aircraft. And Mark, you said the PA-32 went in recently. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's submitted. That is submitted.
Cool deal.
We had questions back from Chicago ACO. I don't know what they are. They changed the template, like every 2 months. So nothing serious. He just said he wanted some other additional stuff.
Yep.
So real plain vanilla. But we're finding Pipers are harder than Cessnas.
Okay.
No, not harder technically, just harder with the FAA, because their type certificates are not as clean. The Cessnas are real straightforward type certificates. Issues keep popping up because Piper's kind of lumps everything together, whereas Cessna breaks it out pretty much, model number by model number, what the changes were. But it's not a big deal. I expect that to be approved within 45 days.
That's cool. I just want to know.
I don't know is I just got a hearsay thing. This guy that has been blasting us on the forums, Greg Peel.
Yes.
Yeah. Now Greg wants to get involved again. So it's, his nose was bent out of joint a couple of years ago. That's fine. I will accept help from anybody. And no, the guy's an engineer. So some things that he designed were okay. Other stuff, Hans changed. And I got dogs barking here. Hans is still our principal engineer. And I need to talk to Hans because he had a discussion with Hans. And, to my knowledge, Hans has got a final design. He and Chuck have agreed on a final design. In which case now it's just a matter of, this is where Greg comes in handy, because Greg does have a machine shop and he can cut metal. But we also have your friend that's got a machine shop.
Yes. So for those who are interested in machining parts for aircraft, we're developing sources with CNC machines and presses. And so we're trying to do bi-coastal. So yes, Hobart did purchase a CNC machine with a very large tray to go along with his other capabilities. That, Tom, may even be applicable to Mooney's and Sonex's at some point. And they're relatively local to us here. So yes, Mark, he is standing by and looking forward to manufacturing install kits. And that was a big driver for that $100,000 investment in CNC equipment.
Yeah, that's
So,
and yeah, and that becomes very important. I mean, you know, Greg calling him saying he wants to get involved. You know, I want to see what Greg can do, but I want to absolutely want to talk to your contact because frankly, he's got better equipment, and was even talking about making a capital investment in the project.
yes, yep. And he's
And
also a twin driver, and so he very much wants a twin autopilot.
right, as do I. And the bottom line, so people understand, we have found in other types, it's running about 25 grand to add an airplane to the approved model list. And that's what we did with the, we just a group of Cessna 170 people, just, you know, crowdfunding. One guy's bringing over his airplane and he's putting 10 grand in the pot, and they got 10 or 15 of them are putting in the rest, and we're going to do the 170. Now the 170 is frankly quite easy because that's just our 172 kit with slight tweak. The Comanche is more difficult because we have to use a capstan. Although I understand Hans has opined that we might not need to do the capstan, but we've been going back and forth with Chuck, and Chuck doesn't think that's going to work. That's what I have not talked to either of them in about 3 to 4 weeks. So, yes.
Well, Hans
I'm on the phone. I'll be there shortly.
Yeah. The Hans that Mark Sullivan is referring to is an FAA DER with a very large number of approvals. So the last I knew, Hans felt that if the PA-32 was approved, the Comanche would be a no-brainer. But I haven't checked with him on that recently.
Right, and see what that, and so that people understand, is Hans initially didn't think we could do it with our existing technology, you know, with a servo arm. He thought we had to have a capstan. And he then changed his mind and said that because we were getting very acceptable performance on the Lance and the Cherokee 6, that by his calculations, we should be able to, it should work on the Comanche. The hesitation that I have and that Chuck Bush have is that the cable travel on the Comanche is substantially more than on a Cherokee. And when I say cable travel, when you go lock to lock at a given point on the cable, it moves like 9 7/8 inches versus 6 inches. That makes a difference when you're attaching a servo arm.
Yep. So I want to take a moment, since we have at least 3 military disciplines represented here, to thank some really kind of impressive veterans. So Tom Wasser, former F-16 flight surgeon, Bill Kniff, former Marine Corps, Mark Sullivan is a Navy JAG Corps. Any other services represented here?
I'm retired Army.
Perfect. That's sorry, Robert. I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Robert's Army. Doggies.
Yeah.
Enlisted Marine Corps.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm caring for a Comanche for an enlisted Marine Corps who's stationed overseas until he gets back.
Robert, I did not make it down to the airport today. I'll do it tomorrow. I know, or maybe even tonight.
Well, that'd be great. Appreciate your help, Mark. And I've got something I need to go to, so I'll just leave my computer on, and Pete, maybe you could just text me whenever the meeting's over, and I'll come up and shut my machine off.
Good deal.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
All righty. If people have ideas for other tele meetings, then we will just send an email, and we'll do our best to put it together.
And believe it or not, I have a client just showed up unexpectedly. I just got on. I got to go off and take care of her.
Thanks for joining, Mark.
And thank everybody. I apologize I was late. Planned to be there, and unexpectedly I was on a Zoom meeting from 4:30 until I signed in.
Dr. Wasser has made provisions for he and the regional flight surgeon and the regional assistant flight surgeon to be available once again. So we will be letting you know.
Yeah, I do have some questions, and there's more and more questions are popping up. It's, you know, it's even my two sons were airline pilots. Their companies are giving them kind of mixed information as well. My oldest son, he couldn't get a straight answer from his human resource department. He just finally found an AME in Florida that would just give him a first class.
Hey, let me caution you that the FAA has specifically said they do not want a virtual examination done. It has to be face-to-face. So,
That's interesting.
so be very careful.
That's for all classes, including third class?
All classes, it has to be face-to-face. There is nothing the FAA Aeromedical branch has said that would allow a virtual examination with an AME. So if anyone is spreading that around, that's incorrect information.
No, he found an AME that was a guy he knows and figured he was not positive and just gave him a physical.
But it was face-to-face.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, it was first class.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. And Tom told me that, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the FAA hasn't prohibited AMEs from doing face-to-face like
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It's an individual physician's choice whether to see patients and pilot applicants. And many physicians are employees of a hospital or medical concern, and they may tell the physician that they're not seeing patients. So that may be a factor.
Oh, yeah. No, I know the AME that I go to is not seeing anybody. Thank you. I appreciate that information. I will, but he's good. My son is good. And the other one is with Alaska, and they've got everybody on furlough, or virtually everybody. They don't call it furlough, but they're not flying.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's a great time to fly because there are so few pilots flying. I've flown more in the last year than I have the previous several years.
I can tell you, my son with Alaska last week departed LAX at 1,000 feet, was given the clearance, cleared Chicago O'Hare direct. That never happens.
Yeah.
Clear Chicago O'Hare direct, flight level 350. Unfreaking believable. You dialed in and went direct. Probably haven't done that since the 1930s.
Right. Charles Lindbergh last did it.
Right.
Wow. And by the way, it takes 20 minutes off the flight time. I was shocked. Got to Chicago in 2 hours and 45 minutes or something crazy.
That's great. And don't forget, you can social distance at and above 5,000 feet just fine, and it gives you a whole new perspective on life. I recommend it.
Well, I've been out flying and went up flying a little Cessna, and it is amazing to see the freeways empty or damn near.
True.
Mark, you're in the Los Angeles area. Have your sky colors changed now that you have less traffic?
They've the last couple of years, they've been pretty clean, visibly clean. I mean, there's pollutants, but you don't get the NOx anymore, so you don't get the yellow sky. It's very rare. But yeah, no, the skies are really blue and pretty.
Silver lining.
And visibility is probably over 100 miles.
Wow. We don't get that here.
I would encourage everybody who wants to see something very interesting, go on YouTube and put into YouTube flight to Victorville. I think it's flight to Victorville. A guy from Whiteman Airport in the San Fernando Valley took his little Grumman and he flew out to Southern California Logistics, which is Victorville. It's the old March Air Force Base. And they let him fly 100 feet over the parked airplanes. And there's like 500 airliners parked there. But what was really interesting is he was using his GoPro. On the way back, he went over the Poppy Reserve. And, you know, absolutely magnificent this year. But they won't let anybody up there to see him. So you got just hills that are just covered with, you know, the orange gold. It's gorgeous.
Wow.
It was just gorgeous. But
I
you can't
did see
drive
that.
the hills.
It was insane. That Victorville is important because I believe it is the second longest runway in the U.S.
Yeah, it's right there because it's only about as the crow flies, about 20 miles from Edwards Air Force Base.
Right. And I saw that, and the airport has 2 runways. They're both incredibly long, and they have covered the runway, the parking areas, the ramps. They are covered with jets, and they are all sort of, if you ever saw Comanche Town where we were trying to park Comanches, like, and we ran out of space, and so we had them in the aisles, and then we're trying to figure out how to fit more airplanes in a small space. It looks like that, only with big jets.
500, and these are all like current generation airliners. So do the math at an average of, let's say, $100 million a piece.
Billions.
Billions of dollars. Yeah, billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's
Scary.
YouTube video was pretty cool. And I gave him a call, and he said, yeah, if the ATC there's nothing happening, I might just take the little Cessna and do that. I looked over, it's kind of cool. Let him fly like 200 feet over the right airport and take pictures. It's like a once in a lifetime event.
All right, fellow Comanche people, I have to take my leave of this meeting as much as I regret it.
I do too. I hear the client out there waiting to talk to me about her taxes.
It's good to see people. We could talk Comanches and stories forever and ever, which we always do. I miss it. This is a great idea. Whoever drummed this up, Pete, CJ, Howard, whoever did this, and all you guys that are involved in it, I think you did a great job. I really, really appreciate it, and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. We'll see you at the next one.
Looking
And
forward
Tom, thanks so much for making this possible.
Have a good night,
Couldn't do
guys.
it without
Fly safely, and don't forget how to fly.
Amen.
All
All right, everybody.
Okay, invite me to the next one. I will join. I'm sorry I came late and I had to leave early.
All right, Mark, you're going to be one of the stars of the next one. You guys are going to have the battle of the autopilots. It'll be Trio,
Okay.
Garmin, and Estec.
Okay, cool.
All right.
I might even get see if I can get Chuck Bush involved in it.
Oh, good. Okay.
I mean, he
I'll
is
be in touch with the list.
He is the tech guy. Okay. See you guys later.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thanks again.
CJ, thanks for the invite.
We'll look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jay.
Night, all.
Thanks, everybody, for putting this on. And next one.
Oh.
All righty. Alan, you just popped up. Good to see you. And I guess I can see if my bandwidth is working. Let me see if I can. Hey, everybody. Mesty here.
Bye.
Good night, all.
I got to be the last one out so I can close the meeting.